Guys, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this now moment with myself and with one another. For those of you who haven't seen these videos before, welcome and welcome back if you have. My intention is benevolence for all, oneness and love light. And I'm just going to roll right into this. If you're interested in a light language video, this is not one of those videos. This is going to be more of a Kiss Keep It Simple Starseeds video. I did post one on Sunday that had quite a bit of light language in it from many different places, so to speak. In addition to that were dialects. I have so many more. You're more than welcome to just pick a video and see what you're guided to watch. If you're interested in watching the video on expansion and earth changes and body changes, I did that one on Friday, the 6th of September. So those are the two most recent ones that I've posted, although I have recorded more, I just haven't brought them up yet. I was actually guided to pop on and talk about disclosure. This is not something that I generally talk about. This actually isn't about disclosure. It's about truth. So I wanted to share the message that was coming through that I wrote in my blog today. Today is September 11th. Did I already say that? And the biggest question that was coming through, or the biggest piece of information that was coming through, is there's big changes happening. Some of us that are in this Starseed network are connected and we know it. We feel it. Big changes are upon us. And the message that was coming through is essentially we are being invited to just stay in our consistency, stay in our frequency, and hold our line, hold our alignment in love and light, because that is the truth of who we are. And the message that was coming through, they wanted me to look up the word truth versus disclosure. There's layers to all of this. So first I want to share that this isn't a prediction. This isn't me saying, okay, the guides are telling me that there's major shifts happening, therefore be ready. The message that they're sharing is be now. So when you're in the present moment, we're always ready. And there may be things that come through and pick us up off of our feet for a moment or make us feel a little disheveled, is what they're saying. Or make us feel a little out of sorts. But if we're here, we're in a state of coherence and we're operating from our heart mind and we're not as plugged in with our hive mind, like, what's this person doing? Well, why are they doing that? Well, when is this going to happen? That helps us stabilize the new grid. And as the old grid begins to melt away, so to speak, crumble or dissolve, or integrate, however you want to look at it, we won't be in such a space of shock or being disheveled if we're in our heart and we're in that place of presence. And that's the biggest message that's coming through. I could even not share the rest of this video and that would be it. That's what they want to share. But of course, our human brain, of course, likes to have those details. When I first started kind of waking up, so to speak, I was really sucked into what's going on, why am I feeling this way, what's happening next, and I always was looking for some sort of validation to what I was seeing, feeling, hearing, experiencing. And my biggest lesson that I had been needing to learn was, you might not get it. Does that make you wrong? Are you going to be happy if you don't have the validation that you're looking for? And that's a really big question that we're being invited to ask ourselves is, are we looking for validation? And we are being invited to let go of that need for validation. And for me, that was a really huge step. And once I did that, a lot of things began to fall into place for me. Because for myself, as a light worker and an empath, that I had always, what's the word when you are pulled towards something? Anyways, I always associated myself with those words, empath, light worker, starseed, and so on and so forth. And that's great. However, I also knew that I didn't necessarily agree 100% with what other starseeds and light workers were sharing. That was their truth. That wasn't necessarily my truth. And neither was it the only truth. So for me, part of the reason I started sharing this with you guys is because I was seeing multiple perspectives. And as we tap into our multidimensional realities or versions of ourselves, we all begin to see multiple perspectives. There isn't only one way. There isn't only one way to enlightenment. Just like yoga. I'm using that as an example because yoga has many different limbs that are all based off of yoga, which is to yoke in oneness. You could do tantric yoga, hatha yoga, meditation, pranayama. Well, those are all part of most yogas, but my point is that there's different forms of yoga, and each of those stem from one truth. And they're just different routes to take that all lead to the same tree, if that makes sense. Now, ultimately, what my guides are sharing with me is that there are big changes and shifts happening. And we're being invited to stay in coherence about it all and realize that all of these pockets of truth or all of these different pieces of disclosure are leading to a bigger place. And of course, we know that if we're talking about disclosure, there are bigger things going on behind the scenes than what we might be being fed. But that also applies in general, is we're being invited to look at the bigger picture and recognize that while there are many people who have beautiful things to say or to share, that isn't necessarily the only thing to listen to. And the more we zoom out and we look at a broader perspective, the more we can see that there's an entire maze, not just one tunnel or two tunnel. There's an entire network of branches and roots, not just one, that all lead to one. So, if that makes sense. And the one is that we're all connected, among many things. So, having said that, I can't pause, so I'm just going to keep going. So what they were sharing with me is that there are big things in the mix. There are big things happening. And we're being invited not to necessarily ask, which we can ask. It's not bad to ask questions. But what they're essentially telling me is don't get hung up on the answer, because it's not the only answer. And it's not the only question. So there are many layers to this. And there are many pockets that people are plugged into, right? And they're inviting us to just branch out and be in the heart. And as we lead from the heart, it takes us out of the hive mind and it puts us in the hive heart, which has kind of been a theme for most of the videos I've done recently. If you ever tune into heart math, they talk about the heart is what programs the brain. But we've been cut off from that, many of us have, because we've been taught that the brain is the know-all, end-all, and that the brain tells the body what to do. And many people know that there's actually a brain in the stomach, there's a brain in the heart, and the heart has more electromagnetic energy than the brain even does. So if we look at that on a collective, if we are all plugged in here, that then controls this. Rather than us being controlled by the stimuli that is around us or the circumstances that we are seeing from the perspective outside of us. It all starts here. So that pulls us out of the hive mind. The hive mind is when one person moves, the other person moves because they are connected here. And I see it as a sheep mentality. Everybody's here, so I must need to go there too. Oh, I must be missing out on something. Oh, This must be the truth, the new way of things. But if we stop and really go here and hone in here first on home base, my home shirt, home base, this also works with Earth, right? Before we're looking outside to galactic and this and that, what's going on here? What's going on here? Tuning into this then dictates a different hive, the hive heart, which then collectively collaborates to create from coherence rather than this constant buzz of incoherence. So even though the hive mind does work together, is it working at its highest capacity for love and light if it's disconnected from here? So that's the biggest message that's coming through. And that's the biggest secret. Really, that's the biggest thing that needs to be disclosed. And it is, obviously, in pockets and through heart math and people like that. So that's the biggest message that's coming through. On a more 4D note, we're being invited to recognize that as these certain truths come up, we are being invited to ask ourselves, are we operating from our own truth? Or are we relying on certain bits and pieces of information? And I always see bits as spelled as B-Y-T-S, like being food for the computer, right? Holding information. Are we too wrapped up in, well, what's happening next? Well, why is this happening? Well, who did it? Well, are they going to be fill in the blanks? That is all outside of us. So while there are people who are, and again, I want to go back in just a moment and touch briefly on disclosure. If someone is in a truther, which I'm going to get into truth versus disclosure in just a minute, and that is their job to share the truth of where our origins are from, or who is in charge of this, and this is not the truth, this is the truth. And that's their job. That's beautiful. That's great. They're fulfilling their mission and their purpose, and that's where they are the happiest. But that's what we're being asked is, are we happy with how we are going about things? So we're being invited to also come from the heart and not be in a place of, yes, we might feel anger. Yes, we're going to feel frustrated from time to time. But is that what's fueling our fire? Right? Are we fueling the fires of this? Passion in compassion? Or are we fueling the fires of hatred, anger, and frustration, which means we're separating the mind and the heart, and we're not working at our highest capacity? So those are some of the messages that are coming through, because as these shifts happen on the earth, and as these major disclosures start to unravel the matrix that we've all existed in, how are we being called to action? Are we coming from compassionate action, or are we just reacting and taking action and not really recognizing the consequences of our speech, how we speak to one another, how we treat one another, and recognizing we're being invited, my guides are saying, recognize that there's a lot more going on than meets the eyes. So we go here, we feel it in our gut, and we go here, inside. Not what is seeing and being reflected back to us. Because what they're sharing with me is that's already happened. By the time we see what's going on out there, it's already been dismantled. It's now we're just starting to see the residuals, the after effects. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. So they're sharing that there's many layers to the truth. And I'll go to that in just a moment. But the biggest truth is who we really are and what we really are. And I don't mean where we came from and our ancestry and all of that, although that is important. And I too would love to see that on the mainstream media. But is that going to dictate how I treat my neighbor? even if they don't believe what I believe? Is that going to dictate how I perceive the world because that one truth hasn't been disclosed, if that makes sense? And they also invited me to play with the word disclosure versus truth. So if you look up the word, I wasn't planning on doing this video, so I'm just kind of trying to keep it quick. Disclosure, it says it's the action of making new or secret information known. So it's like all of this new information is coming to light, okay? And this is happening with a lot of scientific discoveries. We may not see it on the programs that are being allowed to feed back to us, but it is happening. And the secret information that is showing, that's disclosure. Most of us in the starseed and light worker community already know. We know. Then, and moving out with that information, we are acting from our highest expression of love, right? By honoring the fact that some people are still really asleep to that information. So the question that arose as I was having this interaction with my guidance team is, well, okay, but some people will probably ask, isn't it important that we have this disclosure because our new earth is based on us knowing the truth? Or once we have this disclosure, that will be the way to dismantle, fill in the blanks, social, economic, political, whatever, mistruths. And the answer to that is all true. Yes. However, that isn't the only way to go about doing that or to bring about that way of being. So the biggest question was, do we need to see that in order for it to be so? Because they kind of pushed it back on me like, okay, so do you read everything that you read because you're seeing it on the news? Is it true? Well, of course not. So does that mean because you're not seeing it on the news that it isn't happening? Of course not. So we're being invited to feel into a bigger perspective that it is happening. And it's happening, it is not, there is no way to stop it, is what they're sharing. And so we're being invited to let it go because this will start to poke its head through and we will start to see these things start to just unravel. And they're also sharing with me that once something unravels, do we need to see it unraveling for it to disappear? It just sometimes might just disappear and it won't be there anymore. They also asked me about some of the systems because I said, well, are we going to be seeing these particular people? And I wrote this little bubble chart because so we'll go into 4D for a moment, which isn't where I like to play because that's a matrix, right? I like to just be multidimensional. But let's just, for linear perspective, look at this in layers. And let's say somebody gets into trouble for being negative or feeding into a negative bubble, whether it be social, economic, political, whatever. You fill in the blanks. Because disclosure can come from this arena, over here. People might come out and say our school system is lacking. People might come out and say the churches are a mess. This person might come out and say science was wrong. This person might come out and say this was hidden from us and we were lied to about this. This person might come out and say, you see where I'm going with this, that this information was twisted and this is what our foundation has been built upon, therefore all of that stuff is wrong. I could go on and on and on. It's really infinite. So what they were showing though, let's just use one example. Let's say this particular person, and we've had a lot of disclosure. I don't even want to talk about specifics because then that just pulls us into that tunnel. And I want to look at the whole maze, the labyrinth. I don't want to just get sucked into one portal. This is all connected. So what they're showing is, let's say one particular person did something wrong. Well, let me rephrase that. They chose a darker path of more of a negative energy, right? And this person was also connected and sharing this with 10 other people who also chose that path. And let's say, though, out of those 10 other people, 5 of those people dabbled in 10 other negative things, and so on and so forth. This person gets into trouble, and its disclosure hits them, and their secret is revealed. Okay? But these other guys, so let's say there's 2 of these guys here. Okay? These guys get revealed too. But these guys, or gals, could be a guy or a girl, don't. They disconnect, float away, unscathed. Never to be discovered. Okay? More importantly, the person that was feeding Joe or created this in the first place, the bigger, what they referred to them as puppet masters, never get revealed either. So you have one pocket of people that are like, yeah, that came out in the open and mission accomplished. You have the other people that go, but what about these guys, right? Then you have the other people that are like, whoa, so if this is happening here and it was this person that was connected, wow, that goes, those roots go pretty far and wide, don't they? So who else is involved? So you have all these pockets of layers and these layers of disclosure, types of disclosure, and truths that are coming out. Just like if science were to come out and say, guess what? We really are all from what is called the ancient alien theory is correct. We're all from the stars. You're going to have people that kind of knew that are like, I always had a feeling. You're going to have people that were like, yeah, I've known that forever. You're going to have the other people that are like, yeah, I go on ship all the time. You're going to have other people that go, what? And then you're going to have the other people that freak out. Or the other version of people that literally don't believe any of it. It's presented. They are totally don't care. So the question is, us as light workers, do we then get angry because those people refuse to see the truth? And I'm showing it at different layers, okay? They refuse to see that this is where they're from. Does that affect our happiness? Does that affect our ability to take compassionate action by us maybe not being compassionate towards them? See where I'm kind of going with all of this? So the biggest messages were, okay, they also wanted me to show that a lot of people, so back to the whole, yeah, but this creates a vibration and then our new earth is based on this disclosure. Our new earth is based on the truth of who we are. And whether or not we hear that truth from somebody else and our knowings are validated from an outside source, this is the message that's coming through from my guides, does not dictate, unless we choose for it to, our reality. Because the shift has already happened. We just aren't seeing the reflection back from it yet because there's a delay. There's a ripple, there's an echo. And now, big things are now starting to we're going to see them from what they're sharing with me. But again, pulling back from that from a broader perspective, we're being invited not to get hung up and go, ooh, okay, I can't wait. When's it going to happen? What channel should I watch? Does that make sense? So they're being invited like, whoa, feel it, be it, recognize it, right? The other thing that they're sharing is if you look at disclosure, the meaning of disclosure, right, It is the action of making a new or secret information known. Well, then we've already had disclosure because you and I most likely know this. We know these things. And if new secrets come up, it's like, cool, right? But truth is different. Truth is the quality or state of being true. And I could just say, get rid of that and just say the quality or state of being. That is truth. What my guides are kind of reminding us about. Some sidebars here, and I could just end on that note, but if you look at it too, that which is true or in accordance with fact or reality. Now, we could go open up a whole can of worms there, because what is reality? Whose reality is whose? Are they in the 4D? Are they operating from 3D? 3D reality is totally different than 4D and 5D and so on. If that person had a spaceship land on their front lawn, and then the next day they chose to ignore that happened and pretend like it didn't, that is their truth. They refuse to see reality. Does this make sense? So again, my happiness doesn't depend on them accepting the truth. So there's layers here, and we're being invited to kind of look at all of these layers. And, again, this is cool, this is great, this is good, that these things are happening, but it doesn't dictate to me whether I operate from my own truth, which is love, which is acceptance of my brothers and sisters, and helping to lift one another up. The other thing is a fact or belief that is accepted as true. But again, that comes back, well, truth is a quality or state of being. Has nothing to do with the information that is provided to give us our truth. We just are truth. And that was what the biggest message that came through. And this was all a play on words. And it's like, when you read something that's bigger than maybe what, it was just kind of like, okay, whoa, I see where we're going with this with my guidance team. But it's like, I am, that is true. So it's like, I am that I am, right? So all this other stuff around us is just part of a reality that we are essentially changing, shifting, morphing, and moving through, in, and out of, is what they're sharing. So the most important message is be in coherence, be the heart brain, not the brain heart. Be the hive heart, not the hive mind, so that we can operate through a higher intelligence, a higher place of being, and a higher place of knowing, so that as these disclosures and world events that are playing out, what they showed me was there's this whole hive network, and this is the other hive, not our high vibe hive, that we're seeing like certain players come up. They've already been dismantled. They just don't know it yet, is what they're sharing. The other truth is, so what they're sharing is a lot of disclosures. It's not just about this particular thing that's associated with our particular social truth or religious. It's like beyond all of that, and it's in all of those things. There was more. I just wanted to kind of keep this short and sweet. Not that it's that short. But they talked about the fact that loose ends are being tied up, right? And I took a picture of what I wrote. I was just going to read quickly. But you guys are more than welcome to read this on your own. And it basically talks about we may not see everything all in one fell swoop per se, but somehow this is huge. What will be, it is in the process of being revealed. And it's talking about the biggest messages that are happening is this is happening with or without being able to point out all of the people behind it or behind everything. Like, it's bigger than that. And we're asking to see that this is all past tense. And they asked kind of a funny question, like, well, what if this big black, purple energy that's feeding all of this were to just disappear? You know, it's kind of like that question, do we have to see angels to believe they exist? It would be cool, right? We would like to. But does that mean we don't believe in them because we can't see them? And it works both ways. They're asking, in a lot of the messages I've been getting, it's been flip it and reverse it, right? Right, Candace, Missy Elliott, flip it and reverse it. They're asking us to flip it on from the other end of the spectrum. And the other end of the spectrum is, do we need to see it to believe it? It's nice, it's cool to have that validation, it's fun from that perspective, but it isn't necessary really for us to build what it is we're trying to build, because we are the grid. So as these old grids collapse, or as these old grids are integrated into us, because we're the new grids, right? Are we going to want to see that collapse happen? We're already seeing it. So it's, again, not getting sucked into those different tornadoes of energy. And they're also saying, do we want love and light and change, or do we want accountability? That's a big question. That was big for me, because I was recognizing, I was kind of like, well, how come this? I was asking these questions, and then we want both. Of course, that would be nice. However, me wanting that accountability doesn't mean that that is necessarily what I need to see in order to hold myself accountable for my own energy. And that's what this is all about. We are holding our own, we're owning it. We're sovereign beings holding ourselves accountable for our words, deeds, and actions. And as this happens, we hold that grid. And that other stuff cannot exist in that state of being, in that truth. Because it isn't true if they aren't able to vibrate at that frequency. So we're just being invited to see it from that position. That may just no longer, it might cease to exist. And then what? Yay. So in love and light, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Very exciting. I've got goosebumps everywhere. So I invite you to read my blog if you're interested on keepitsimple.starseeds.com. I don't think I connected those domains yet. So carryyvonne.com. I'm uploading the blog today. I do a lot of posts on Keep It Simple Starseeds Instagram, Instagram. And maybe I'll actually open a Facebook page today, or reopen the one. I deleted my old one. I just wanted to start fresh. So maybe I'll get that going. But in love and light, guys, thank you so much. Namaste. May the light within me see the light within you. I do. This is, you guys, it's so exciting when we see each other from these bigger perspectives. It's really beautiful. And I'm really grateful to be sharing this with you guys. So thank you.